My name is Noah Bennett. A few years ago, if someone had asked me whether dreams really come true, I probably would have smiled and said, I don't know anymore.
Because there was a time when I almost gave up on mine.
Today, I'm gonna tell you my story. Not because I want sympathy, but because I hope it helps someone who's standing where I once stood. I grew up in a small ranch town in Montana. It wasn't the kind of place where people chase big dreams. Most families had lived there for generations. My father repaired tractors and farm equipment, while my mother took care of our home. Everyone assumed I'd spend my life doing the same thing. But deep inside, I wanted something different. Behind our barn was an old wooden workshop. That place became my escape from the world. Every afternoon, after finishing my chores, I'd disappear into that workshop with a few pieces of wood and a handful of tools. While other people saw rough lumber, I saw coffee tables, bookshelves, rocking chairs, works of art. Creating something with my own hands made me feel alive. Every piece I finished reminded me that maybe, just maybe, I was meant for something bigger. I needed a place to sort through the day, a corner of the night that was mine alone. Inside were hundreds of sketches, furniture designs, business ideas, even a rough drawing of the showroom I dreamed of opening one day in Denver. I wasn't dreaming about becoming rich. I simply wanted people to appreciate the work I loved creating. One evening, I made a decision that changed everything. During dinner, I looked at my parents and said, Mom, Dad, next spring I'm moving to Denver. I'm opening my own furniture studio. The room became so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. My mother looked worried. Noah, cities are expensive. People don't take chances on unknown craftsmen. Son, dreams don't pay the bills. I nodded. I didn't argue. But those words stayed with me all night. A few days later, I met my childhood friends at our favorite diner. I thought they'd be excited for me. They laughed. One of them leaned back and said, "You're opening a business in Denver? Seriously?" Another smiled and added, just outside town. It was a place I'd visited as a child whenever I needed to clear my mind. The water was perfectly still. The only sound was birds singing in the distance. That's when I noticed him. An elderly man sat on an old wooden bench beneath a towering pine tree. He wasn't fishing. He wasn't reading. He was carefully carving a small wooden eagle with nothing more than a pocket knife. Every movement was slow, precise, peaceful, as if the world around him didn't exist. I don't know why, but something told me to walk over. Without even looking up, he smiled and said, "Heavy thoughts usually bring people to this lake." I froze. Then I laughed quietly. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. He finally looked at me. His eyes weren't filled with pity. They were filled with understanding. For some reason, I told him everything. I told him about my dream, my parents, my friends, the laughter, Brandon, and how I felt like I had already failed before I had even begun. He listened without interrupting me once. When I finally stopped talking, he reached into his coat pocket. Instead of giving me advice, he placed a tiny acorn in my hand. Tell me, what do you see?" I looked down. An acorn. He smiled. "No, you're holding an oak tree." I frowned. "I don't understand." He pointed toward the enormous oak standing beside the lake. "That giant tree once looked exactly like the seed in your hand. If someone had laughed at that seed, would it have stopped growing?" I slowly shook my head. Then his voice became serious. "Noah, dreams are the same. The moment you expose them too early, you invite people to judge something that hasn't had time to grow. Some people will doubt you. Some will copy you. Others will unknowingly convince you to quit because they surrendered their own dreams years ago." Those words hit me harder than anything I'd ever heard. Then he said something I'll never forget for the rest of my life. "Your biggest mistake wasn't dreaming. It was asking people for permission to believe in your dream." I couldn't say a word. I simply stared at the lake. Then he pointed toward an old tree stump nearby. Its center was hollow. Its bark had begun falling away. "Do you know what happened to that tree?" he asked.
Yeah.
I shook my head. "Lightning?"
Lightning?
He smiled sadly. "No. People cut into it year after year. Not enough to kill it immediately, just enough to weaken it. Eventually, the smallest storm brought it down." He looked directly into my eyes. "Negative words work exactly the same way. One opinion won't destroy your dream." I felt tears forming. Not because I was weak, but because I realized something painful. Nobody had stolen my dream. I had slowly handed it away, one conversation at a time. Before I left, the old man placed the tiny acorn back into my hand. "Plant this," he said, "and don't come back until you've learned to protect what's growing beneath the surface." As I walked back toward my truck, I looked at the acorn resting in my palm. It suddenly wasn't just a seed anymore. It was a promise. A promise that from that day forward, I would stop announcing my future and start building it. But what happened over the next 2 years tested me in ways I never imagined. There were nights I nearly quit forever. Moments when I had no money, no customers, and no one to believe in me except the man staring back at me in the mirror. Was my silent promise enough to survive those darkest days? Or was life about to take everything from me one final time? When I left the lake that morning, I wasn't a successful businessman. I wasn't richer, I wasn't smarter, but something inside me had changed.
I stopped worrying about proving people wrong. Instead, I started proving myself right. The old man's words echoed in my mind every single day. Protect your dream until it's strong enough to stand on its own. From that day forward, I told no one about my plans. Every morning before sunrise, I walked into my workshop while the rest of the town was still asleep.
I worked until my hands ached. I studied furniture designs online. I watched videos from master craftsmen.
I learned marketing, branding, photography, and even how to sell products online. At night, while others were sleeping, I was still working.
There were weeks when I barely earned enough money to buy new wood. Some days I questioned whether all the sacrifice was worth it.
Then life tested me even harder. One winter evening, a violent snowstorm swept across Montana.
The roof of my old workshop collapsed. Months of finished furniture destroyed. Expensive tools, ruined. My notebook filled with years of sketches,
Soaked beyond repair. I stood there in complete silence. Everything I had worked for seemed buried beneath broken wood and snow.
For a moment, I wanted to quit. I honestly did. But then I reached into the pocket of my old work jacket. The small acorn the old man had given me was still there. I held it tightly and remembered his words. Storms don't decide the strength of a tree. Its roots do. That night, instead of giving up, I started cleaning. One broken board at a time. One damaged tool at a time. One small step at a time. Weeks turned into months. Months became 2 years. Without making announcements,
Without seeking approval, without waiting for anyone to believe in me, I quietly built my future. Then one spring morning,
I packed my best handcrafted furniture into an old pickup truck and drove to Denver. I rented the smallest showroom I could afford. It wasn't glamorous. The walls were plain. The sign outside wasn't perfect.
but every piece inside had been built with my own hands. On opening day, only 3 customers walked in.
I smiled anyway. The next day, there were 7. A week later, someone posted one of my handcrafted tables online. Orders began arriving from different states. A local magazine featured my work. Soon, interior designers started calling. Within a year, my tiny showroom had become a respected custom furniture studio. The dream everyone laughed at
had quietly become my reality. A few months later, I returned to the lake to thank the old man.
I couldn't wait to tell him he had changed my life. But when I arrived, the bench was empty. I searched nearby until I found an elderly park ranger. I asked if he knew the woodcarver who used to sit by the lake.
The ranger looked at me for a long moment before quietly saying, "Walter Hayes passed away almost a year ago."
I felt my heart sink. I stared at the empty bench, unable to speak.
The ranger smiled gently and handed me a small wooden eagle. He left this with me. He told me, "One day, a young craftsman named Noah will come looking for me. When he does, give him this and tell him he never needed my permission. He only needed to believe in himself."
I held that carving with trembling hands. Tears filled my eyes. Not because Walter was gone,
But because even after his passing, his final lesson had found its way to me.
Today, that little wooden eagle sits on a shelf in my office. Not as a decoration, but as a reminder.
Dreams are fragile in the beginning. They don't need applause. They don't need validation. They need patience. They need discipline. And most importantly, they need protection.
If you're listening to my story today, maybe you're carrying a dream that no one else understands. Don't abandon it because people laughed.
Don't shrink it because others doubted you. And don't announce it before you've built it.
Sometimes the strongest dreams grow in complete silence. Just like an acorn beneath the soil. No one sees it becoming a mighty oak.
Until one day,
the whole world stands in its shade. Thank you for listening to my story. And if there's one lesson I hope you remember after today, it's this.
Your dream doesn't need everyone's belief. It only needs your commitment. Keep building, keep believing, and let your success make the introduction.
Dreams are like seeds. They are fragile in the beginning, and they need time, patience, and protection to grow. Not everyone will understand your vision. Seeking approval too early can fill your mind with doubt, or inspire others to act before you do.
Instead of announcing your dreams, work on them quietly, with discipline and consistency.
Let your actions speak louder than your words, and let your success tell your story.
Remember, your dream doesn't need everyone's belief. It only needs your commitment, hard work, and faith in yourself.
Thank you for watching. If you like this, please subscribe, like, share, and comment.